Over in mainland China, boosting domestic consumption is set to be one of the key topics at this year's Two Sessions, an annual gathering of the nation's political elite. Now, you may remember Chinese authorities introduced stimulus policies in September, but it appears that they have yet to achieve the boost that they intended. So what's holding Chinese consumers back? CNA's Tan Zihui follows a resident in Beijing to find out why she is keen on downgrading her spending.
I moved back to Beijing from New York City last year. I feel the city has changed. Even the country has changed. I just feel like the economy was not growing as fast. So personally, for myself, I became more conservative in my personal spending. At the same time, I don't want to downgrade my lifestyle. I still want to maintain my current lifestyle without spending too much. I want to be a smart consumer. That's why I accumulate those coupons. I was just looking for the best deals. So this is the restaurant's coupons or dining vouchers I've collected for dining out. And these ones, I just bought them this morning. There's a lot of competition, it's very competitive. So I need to be very fast in order to get the best restaurants, best deals. The different platforms offer different coupons. So the more I spend, the more I can save. So totally, I think it helped me save more than 10,000.
我有那个买一赠一券呢，就是我那个买一赠一券是不是点什么都可以？对，点什么都可以买一赠一。
They call this a discount, like 小确幸，就是 even though it's help you save 10 yuan, 20 yuan, even a small amount of money, but the happiness is certain.
看一看呀。I used to do my luxury product shopping here almost every year, but since last year I haven't purchased any designer's handbag. 这个包多少钱？这个是4400。So I used to buy my perfume and body lotion, hand cream here, and my skin care and makeup products here. But right now I just wait for the annual sales to buy all of them. I think for annual sales they have 20% discount. With the money I saved, I can put that in my saving account, in my investment account, stock market account. I become more future oriented. 哇，这个打7折很划算。
If Chinese government can give everybody like cash gifts, like other governments did during the pandemic, well, I think that will be a big gift. I will use the cash gift maybe to treat myself with a holiday trip.
要看这个。
I'm still optimistic towards the future. It just maybe it is a adjustment of the economy, so we need to hedge against the risk and weather through the uncertainties.
All right, for more, let's bring in Yue Su, principal economist at the Economist Intelligence Unit and CNA's China correspondent Tan Zihui from Beijing. First to you, Zihui. So you followed that business professional, and she looks like the typical, high spender who's really tightening her belt, cutting back. How prevalent is this, and what kind of impact does this have on China's economy?
Well, let's first talk about affluent consumers. Now, surveys show that sales of personal luxury goods that fell by 20% last year. And those who still have the appetite for luxury goods, well, they're spending their money overseas. And so I followed that lady that you just saw. Her priority now is not on luxury goods. It's really about household savings. Savings is clearly very important to her. And we've seen that household deposits have increased by 6% in December last year. So household savings are increasing, but that doesn't seem to be translating to consumption spending. And so there are some various reasons for this, and they are looking at uncertainty in the future. As we've heard from the lady, she says she's becoming more future-oriented, so she's thinking more about retirement savings. And we also know that there's a lot of job insecurity currently here in China. We've seen many thousands of layoffs in the previous years. In 2022 and 2023, thousands were laid off at big tech companies. And the year after, in 2024, we saw another round of cuts by multinational tech companies. And the finance sector, it also has its own challenges amid a weak stock market and falling prices in the property sector. Well, that's leading to lesser accumulation of wealth and also more increase in the debt burden due to mortgages. And so this has led to an impact on retail sales. And even though overall retail sales growth has recovered over the last few years, we haven't seen it reaching pre-pandemic levels yet. And this would indirectly impact economic growth. And so these are some of the factors that are affecting consumption spending. But with that said, this is more keenly felt in top-tier cities like Beijing and Shanghai. We still see a healthy consumption level in third-tier and fourth-tier cities, such as Zhejiang City.
All right, I hear what you're saying, Sihui, but just before we continue with the rest of the interview, I just want to do a quick recap on some of the measures announced by China so far in terms of boosting consumption. In recent months, officials have expanded a consumer goods trade-in scheme to include more home and digital appliances. And they've also pledged to increase budget deficits this year, as well as adopt a moderately loose monetary policy going forward. Now, Yue Su, I just want to bring you in now. I was just talking about this trade-in scheme. How successful do you think it has been since it was launched last year? And why do you think the government is kind of reluctant to boost, the demand side of things, like giving cash handouts, for instance?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think so far the trade-in scheme has been kind of very successful, given if you look at the volume trade, it definitely surged during the Chinese New Year period. However, we also wanted to caution that we didn't see price increase following the introduction of that scheme, even if we see that transaction or retail sales of electronic products increased by nearly 200% during the Chinese New Year. However, if you look at the CPI, the price level of that product, we didn't see an increase of price, which means that demand, which is the indication that demand remains relatively weak. So that's the response to the first question. And second question regarding distributing money or helicopter money to the household, I think there are two reasons. So the first reason is technical reasons, technology or infrastructure readiness. It's actually it's the bank account ownership of Chinese household are not 100%. So it really takes efforts for the central bank or the central government to distribute money, cash to the household, especially for the rural household. And that's the reason from the technology readiness perspective. And the other reason, I think, Sihui already pointed out, now the propensity to save is actually very high. Even if the government gives household cash, it wouldn't immediately translate into retail sales or consumption. It, by large percentage point, a large probability will translate into precautionary saving, which is already very high. So I think that's summarized the two reasons why the central government are very reluctant to do helicopter money that has been tested successful in the United States after COVID opening up.
So a lot of people hoarding their cash, basically. Sihui, so it seems that the government has been quite keen on boosting supply instead of demand, such as through the new industries like silver industry or the EV sector. What's your observation on that?
Officials are looking to adapt to the shift in consumer patterns, so there are more calls and focus towards policies looking into structural shifts in consumption patterns. And also, they're looking at several factors like the silver economy. We've seen that China has a rapidly aging population, so there are a lot more goods and services targeted at older adults. And we've seen that there's a projection of about 30 trillion yuan by 2035 for the silver economy. That's up from the current 7 trillion yuan, and that will raise its share in the economy to roughly 10%. That's why there's a lot of focus on the silver economy. And we also know that consumers are becoming more eco-friendly. They are looking at more sustainable goods and services. And so they're looking at more renewable energy. They're looking at electric vehicles, organic food. We're also, beyond the supply side, we're also looking at the debut economy. There's a lot more priority by the government looking at debut economy, where brands and services, they're looking at different platforms to unveil their technology and their products, really to spur this excitement and generate some kind of purchasing growth. And that is why these are some of the factors that they're looking at when it comes to new growth drivers. But to Yuesu, I need to ask whether these new growth drivers, are they big enough to stimulate the economy, or does there need to be more interventions?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, it's definitely going to be effective in terms of boosting employment and income. However, I think in terms of see a sustained recovery of consumption, more efforts needs to be done, and we haven't yet seen a positive spiral being formed. I think if you look at the overall employment by sectors, the new industry or the green industry or digital economy just account for a small share. However, I think it's construction activities and manufacturing and catering industry actually accounts for a large percentage, a large share of total employment. So if we couldn't see that those three sectors to have a really strong recovery, it's hard for me to see the overall income level, overall income growth to return to a really robust growth trend. So I would say that to a certain extent, the new economy could help, but more efforts needs to be done by the central government during the two sessions.
Yeah, which leads me to ask you, Yuesu, what then do you think some of these possible measures could be announced or expected from this year's two sessions to effectively boost the spending?
Yeah, I think some policy already happened. For example, I think right after the Chinese New Year, President Xi meet a few private sector entrepreneurs and try to give more support to the private sector, because private sector is really important. It accounts for 70% of the job creation and nearly 90% of the new job creation. So stabilizing the private sector will definitely be the top priority of the Chinese government. That could be a measure. And second thing is I'm looking at how the enterprises will provide more social securities to the employees. For example, like the tech giants, including Meituan and Jingdong, already expressed their willingness to provide insurance to migration workers. That is something that could really contributes to a welfare and improvement of the average labor in this market. So that's definitely positive. And third thing I will be looking at will be how the country will be helping the youth to find a job, given we know that the employment rate among those youths are relatively low compared to historical periods of time. So how to boost youth employment and income will be a key policy that I will be looking at. And lastly, I think China just released its #1 document, which looking at rural reform, and there are certain mentions about how to improve the rural household income, and I'm going to look into. I think I'll be waiting for the two sessions to provide more details about the implementation of the #1 documents. So that summarizes the four things we'll be closely tracking for the two sessions.
Right, and just before I let you go, very quickly, I'm going to talk about the property sector. That's long been a key driver of wealth in China. But now with all that downturn, to what extent do you think consumer caution, people afraid to spend, is linked to their falling home values and slower investment returns?
Yeah, I think it's very much relevant. I would say it's 60% relevant to the housing market's performance is more than 50% relevant to the performance of retail sales. So from two channels. One channel is directly related to the house appliances and housing furniture consumptions, which is part of the retail sales. So if no transaction in the property sector, then no need for new house appliances and furniture. And second channel is through wealth effect. If we couldn't see the price stabilize for the Chinese housing market, then I think the wealth effect, negative wealth effect, will continue to be a dragging factor to consumption and consumer confidence. I think it will take another 6 months to really see the housing market bottom out throughout the whole country.
Right, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so very much for your insights. Yue Su, Principal Economist at the Economist Intelligence Unit, and of course our CNA's Tan Tzu Hui in Beijing.